Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I have an amazing guest today, and I'm super excited to share her with you for a few reasons. One is because as life happens, the journey to meeting her came from a recommendation to a recommendation through a recommendation. Three generations of recommendation, not generations, but 3 points of recommendation. I'll talk a little bit more about it once I've introduced her. But Nattalee Lillico, did I say it right, Nattalee Lillico? She is a human design expert and coach. She is a marketing and sales strategist. And basically, she is a first generation analyst of human design, the Genius Report, a Gene Key Guide. 22 years of experience as the first generation of being the foundational learner of this information. And now we've got a couple of decades of people implementing it. So I feel honored, really, is the first word that comes to mind when I think about being able to sit down and have a conversation with her, with you guys. And the second word that comes to mind is just really excited, because we're going to be talking a little bit about what human design is and specifically how it applies to my life, because I just thought it would be really interesting for people to hear. Her and I have not discussed the reading that she's doing with me together yet. So I just wanted to really show everyone what it's like to have somebody do a human design reading and how much of it aligns with someone who basically you've only known less than 2 weeks, and they read your chart and then tell you what you need to know about yourself. So welcome, Nattalee. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And I'm honored as well to be introduced to your tribe and your connections. And thank you so much
You're
for having
welcome.
me today.
Yeah, so I have to say, a friend of mine who is also an NLP coach, her name is Nikki. She had, I think, done a reading with you, maybe for her and her family, her kids, or what have you. And then she recommended you to Courtney. And then Courtney was working with you on a couple of different things. And then you were looking for a recommendation for, I think was it just for copywriting, or what was your request when you asked for?
That was the original request. As I asked, Courtney was helping me with a project. And I said, how are you on writing sales pages? And she said, I said, do you have a format? She goes, no, but I have a recommendation for you. And so we just set up an appointment to meet.
Yeah. Right. And so it's really interesting. And I want to tell all you guys, so independently on my own, I had felt this burning desire to understand my human design. And so I started doing my own research. I probably spent about 5 or 6 hours one day, just like going down every rabbit trail I could find on the internet. And I ordered some books, I'm like, this is incredible. This is fascinating. And I had gone through all this information only to have then pop up the very next week a request in my calendar to book a call to speak with a human design expert who needed copywriting support. And I was like, oh man, nothing is ever unintentional in my world. I just feel like it all kind of works out. And so then when we end up getting on the call, you had said something about, I think, to the effect of like, I very rarely meet people who can keep up with me. And I thought it was kind of funny because it's like maybe so much of my background and just my own personal development was able to stand up to, what you kind of understood about, or not, that helped me to stand up to what I was starting to understand. So I was like, I just learned about human design like a month ago, and the week prior did all this research, and yet here I was on this call, like perfectly prepared, knowing how to say what I needed to say. But it was also, this is why I think the design is so interesting, is because it was also aligned with how I already think, what I already had started to learn, sort of that conditioning. So before we get started into too much, I want you to introduce a little bit about yourself. And you and I had talked a little bit yesterday about some of the distractions that people have and why they come to work with you. And then we'll talk a little bit more about my chart, because the conditioning aspect was something that is a journey that I had been on of deconditioning myself. But for my listeners who don't know what that means, tell us what that means as far as how you run your business.
Okay, so a little bit about me is around in my late 20s, I just got tired of being depressed. And that started me off on this, path of meditation and, all things astrology. And back then there wasn't a whole lot in the self-help section of the bookstore, but, I devoured it all. And I didn't know that that was just like going to be my whole profession and my whole life. I was just trying to get some relief from my depression. And so it just kind of, was just like one step led to another, led to another. It wasn't anything I ever really planned. You don't plan to be a life coach or life purpose coach or anything like that, of which all things I have worn those labels in the past. So I ended up working with professional speakers and award-winning authors, and in a coaching culture. And so I was always, they used a lot of typology, the Myers-Briggs and many, many others. So then when in my early 40s, I found human design. I understood astrology, understood numerology, but I was like, human design just stopped me in my tracks. It was so accurate. And I didn't go into it like, oh, great, even though I knew it could help other people. It's like, no, help me, because I had myself turned around backwards. And so it helped me so much. It totally transformed my life. Then people started asking me, well, would you tell me about my chart? So everything came to me according, just responding to life. And it was, the rest is history. People just kept asking me, and oh, can I come back and talk to you in a month? Can you coach me on this? So it was a very natural progression. What I found with people that would come to me over the years, because I started coaching people like in 2005, was that everybody said, how do I use this in my life? This is great information, because it does give us a strategy for life. Like, how do we, and human design is an energy map. It's based on our birth information. It's based on the planets and the I Ching and a couple other elements, ancient systems that got synthesized, that came through in 1987, and I started studying it in 1999. So barely a decade after it was fresh out. And people wanted to know, based on their birth information in this energy map that I can look at, how do I use this in my life? And the biggest part of human design, when people, come to get quote unquote a reading or an analysis, is to find out not only who they are, but who they're not. And, because how we were raised, and I think most people figured this out by their late 20s or 30s. It's like, we all got raised, we were homogenized. We went to school, we sat in the straight rows, you got the right answer or the wrong answer, and there wasn't anything in between. And whether it was your parents or your teachers or your culture or your religion, it was conditioned that you were to behave a certain way. These are the standards. These are the shoulds. These are the obligations.
Yes.
And then by 30, people are going, wait a minute,
Right.
I went to school to become this or that, and that's not even my dream,
Right.
Or sometimes people, they can be older when they come to that discovery.
Yeah. There you go. Well, and therein lies the thing of the conditioning. We don't even know that we've been conditioned. And so a lot of times, even, go ask so-and-so, right? So it's like asking for permission in life, asking for, can I do this? At some point I came to a realization. I'm like, who am I asking for permission on how to live my life, and why? Why am I asking for permission on this? And one of the things that became really relevant to me was, and this is, I guess, even in the conditioning. And I didn't know that it wasn't a thing to me until it was revealed to me. And somebody said to me, if you wanted to go back to work, because I was, thinking maybe I wanted to go back to having a career. And if you wanted to go back to work, like, would your husband even let you? And I was like, wow, how am I living my life that someone would even ask me that question? Because I feel like I'm a fairly independent person. So, and my husband is not, he's not that kind of husband. So what is that saying about the way I'm living my life and the way that people are viewing me, that they would even ask me? So then I started thinking about that. And then it was apparent to me, I was, asking my husband questions like, is it okay with you if I go to the grocery store after dinner? questions like asking for permission for random things. And I was like, when did I lose my sense of independence? Was it in my motherhood? Was it when I quit working to become a stay-at-home mom? Was it in the journey of motherhood? Was it in the feeling like I didn't know how to be a mom or what kind of mom I wanted to be, and seeking all this information out in the world about like how to be a good mom? Is it, was it in, what community was I in at the time that was leading me to believe that the questions were not within me, and how that was just like becoming really relevant? And so then that's one thing I really work with my clients a lot on, is how to ask for support and not permission. So it was even just like getting into, as you and I know in my design, is to inform. And so now I ask questions in a different way. I'm headed to the store after dinner. Do you have anything else going on? What's going on with you? I have to head to the store. I need to do these things. How do we make it all work? When it was like, I'd like to go to travel to France, right? And I said, how do we make this happen in our finances? I'd like to take this trip. How can we work that out? How can I get your support in what I'm trying to do? And so that was something that I uncovered that felt better to me and more aligned long before I understood what human design even was. And so just so that people understand that when I say strategy, and my strategy is to inform instead of asking for permission, what does strategy mean in the human design? And as far as, I know we're not here to just educate people, but give us a little bit of a rundown as to what it means to have a strategy.
Well, but let's just say what the main strategies are for life, because there are four. The first category, the first thing that people look up in human design is, what is your type? So there's 4 different types. I won't name those right now, but I'll say what the 4 strategies are. Your strategy is to inform. My strategy is to respond, to wait to respond. There's another type that their strategy is wait to be invited. Mm-hmm. And then there's a 4th strategy that's very, very rare. There's only 1% on the planet, and they're to wait to be invited and then wait 30 days.
Wow.
So as people can hear, there's a whole lot of waiting going on, and we're like, what? Nobody was raised to wait for anything. I know in my culture, I certainly wasn't. It was like, go do it. The Nike, just go do it. And especially in the Western culture, it's like push, force, make it happen. The early years of Tony Robbins, he worked right down the street from our office. So I knew him and his coaches very well. And that was in the early years, in the early 90s. And Tony Robbins just personified that, make it happen. It's up to you. And I love you, Tony. So no, nothing negative, but right. we kept getting that in the personal and professional development arena. We got that if you want to succeed, you have to do it this particular way. And yet, as you just heard, oh my gosh, over 80% of the people on the planet, their strategy involves some kind of waiting. And not that you have to sit on your hands and wait, it's an awareness. So there's a whole understanding about, and we could take each person's strategy and talk, right, for weeks about all the little nuances of it. But it involves an awareness, and it's a coming back to the self, to be connected to the self, to be in the body, to get that awareness of, is this something that is really going to be valuable or satisfying for me to give my energy to?
Right. I love that. Well, and so I think in an interesting perspective of like, once you actually do your chart, and people can, just so you know, everyone, you can go online and you can download a free chart and get some basic understanding just free of charge. And then when you're ready to take your basic understanding to the next level, you schedule a call with Nattalee, and she will, go through your chart prior to doing a call with you. And so then it takes your information or your understanding to the next level. But I think it's really interesting because it's like some of the things that I learned in the chart, super simple. One thing that it says in your chart, people, is that it talks about how you best digest your food. And so in my digestion, it says to eat hot food. And so you were talking about that. And I just started laughing when I was listening to that, because I have said for years, to anyone who was curious or wanted to listen, I was like, I think I was born on the wrong continent, because when it comes to the way that I eat, I love to eat spicy food. I'm like, give me Indian food, give me spicy Indian food, spicy Thai food. I eat the only thing I like to cook and enjoy cooking is soup. Everything else, you can take it and shove it, right? Like, I don't want to do that. I want to have no interest in it. And at one point, I even had to go through a gut healing protocol because I had a lot of problems with my gut. And one of the gut healing protocol things was, drinking bone broth. Well, then I ended up saying, okay, the best way for me to do that in the morning was to have some soup or stew. And I was eating soup, like hot stew, for breakfast, and putting it in a coffee mug and driving my kids to school while drinking stew from a mug. And I just thought to myself, this is pretty much the best breakfast I've ever had. Why have I never thought, who thinks to eat soup or stew for breakfast? And it was like the happiest I had ever been. It felt very healing, aside from the fact that I was actually doing a gut protocol, but it felt healing to start my day that way. So when I got my report and it says, or my chart, and it says this, and then, and I saw it and I was like, oh, hot food. Yeah, I like spicy food. And then you talked a little bit about it in my, in the call that you had sent me, reading through my chart. And I just thought, I knew it. Like, I actually knew it, but I didn't know that it was a thing. I didn't know that eating that way wasn't just healing for the average human, that it resonated with me because it's literally how my body was designed. And the fact that I love eating spicy food and, all of the things, hot, spicy food, not just spicy and not just hot. And I don't know if spice has anything to do with it, but it raises the temperature of my body, which is what it's saying, that, you want to have things that are hot, higher in temperature than the tongue and your digestion. And I just thought, who would have known? Nobody could. I certainly didn't know. So I was like, I can't wait to tell Nattalee that it's just like, I've decided to eat that way, not knowing that it was probably in best service to my body from a design perspective. So how bizarre. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the first person, but I was like,
well, I think you bring up the point that you bring up, the part of human design that talks about people's food and digestion and immunity is a little bit more advanced. I don't know that people can just find that online. So don't people want to go search what's my food based on human design?
Right.
You're going to exhaust yourself looking for that. But the point is that human design is a language, and it's just slightly off enough that it describes things about ourselves that we may or may not know. Mm-hmm. But if we do know, or we've had this inkling, it's like it opens up this whole permission piece to be ourselves. Mm-hmm. And if it does give us something that we're not quite, no, I've never really seen that. Or I've had some people that I've shared their food and they're like, oh, I couldn't do that. So it's like, okay, it's a personal preference. My invitation to people with anything that you hear about your design is, do not take it as the gospel.
Right.
Go test it out. Right. Test out the strategy. What happens when I wait to respond? What happens when I don't wait to respond? And that's what I did in the very early stages. Right after I got my reading, I was like, well, my life's not working so great anyway. Why don't I just try this? And I really took it to heart, and I took it to the mundane pieces of my life and relationships about what would waiting to respond look like in this particular situation, mostly personal, but some professional. And then you see yourself. And then what happens, and this is where my coaching comes in, is that I'm a feedback loop. I'm like, no, go test that out. It's like you're in the laboratory. This is an experiment. Yes. And you go test that out and find out what happens, and then come back and talk to me. And I'm going to open it up. I'm going to shine the light, and you're going to see your path so much clearer. And you are going to walk that path with so much more confidence and clarity because you've had it validated. Validation, I think, does not get its due in the world. It's like, okay, you validated that for me. It's like, well, it's a lot more than that. If we're talking about relationships and we validate something about your son or your brother or your husband, and you go, oh, you mean they're just like that? I'm like, yeah, they're just like that. It's like, oh, phew, the stress just leaves. It's like, oh, I'm not going to try to change that. That's how their energy map works.
Right.
Or if we validate something about you personally, it's like, okay, you don't need to second guess that anymore. It's yours. Go ahead. Here's the flashlight on the path. It's okay to walk that way. Over here, there's some cracks in the sidewalk on this way. And I'm going to tell you where the cracks are. And then that way, you won't trip up as much. You may still try to do things that way, but you're going to very soon see, especially if you have that feedback loop with someone that knows the system, can say, okay, how did that work for you?
I love it. Well, and I love that
there's no shame. There's no judgment in this. It's just an experiment.
Yes.
To take the information and see how this fits in your life, in the mundane, and then in the bigger decisions after that.
I love it. And so you touched on two words that I really want to just reflect back here. And one is experiment, right? It's trial and error. It's being willing to be open to say, let's see. It's not right or wrong. It's what's best or not best. It's a matter of being, and the thing that was most important for me was learning to trust myself, which I'm still learning to trust myself, right? But that's like, how do we trust ourselves when the decision feels right? And then we go with it without the second guessing. And I think part of it, which you touched on also, is just, it's a level of self-acceptance, that we criticize or second guess ourselves. That's part of the conditioning that someone else knows better than me, right? So it's like how to get your information elsewhere. But there's a level of self-acceptance that I think I had to cross that threshold in order to get into the self-love. Because it was like, once I saw it in black and white and I saw this chart and I thought all of these things that I had a lot of tension with, because, in my design, it's like having that the shock value. And sometimes it's a little bit jarring to say what I have to say. And some people really love that about me, that I'm very direct and to the point. It is also in my design that had to rein in some of that and not be blurting things out, and to tap into a certain amount of sensitivity. And sensitivity is something that I am working on because, I'm like, okay, well, here's the problem. Just, just fix it. Right. And not always having a level of sensitivity that helps me to softly explain what I am trying to convey, so that people can receive the information. And so it's interesting because, and I don't know, tell me if this is true, but so on my chart, there's a number that comes up 3 times. It's the number 51, and that is the gate of shock. And I had watched a video somewhere, and they said that when you have the same number multiple times, especially the 51, something about it said that people who have had the number 51 2 or more times in their chart, that they tend to have experienced near death experiences in life. Do you know that to be true?
I don't know that to be true, but I wouldn't, knowing the 51 inside and out and upside down, it certainly would make sense. I've not heard it said that way. Interesting, the original person, Ra Uri Hugh, who brought in this information, he was born right around in the same week that you were, within a few days, not the same year, obviously, but he had this 8-day experience. And so he was shocked by this information that he took in. So the shock, of which I have that also, I have that same gate. It's like we get shocked and we shock other people. I mean, it's got a very deep spiritual backing to it that doesn't, it's like you've not been there before.
Right.
It's like the leap.
Yeah.
We leap into, different things or towns or just experiences.
Mhm.
And we don't know what's on the other side. I think the key word with the 51 is the courage.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that's what, people feel from you also. It's shock, but it's also, it brings the courage to leap without knowing what's on the other side of it.
Right. Well, and so, and herein lies the part that I found so interesting when I had read that, and then I saw that it came up 3 times in my chart. So I was in I mean, I don't know if you know this yet, but I was in a head-on collision by a drunk driver when I was 10 years old. And so it went through a lot to overcome that. And so number one thing that people say to me is like, wow, you're so brave, right? Like everything that I've gone through in my life, and having gone through multiple surgeries to recreate my face, and metal plates in my cheek. I mean, my cheek was shattered, and I have I got a facelift when I was in 8th or ninth grade, because I had scars on my forehead that they lifted my head and put the scar in my hairline, and basically changed the way my face looked. But all that to say, so that when it said it came up, and then I, tell people, just last night I was at a barbecue, and the guy says, if you don't mind me asking, what happened to your face? And some people never notice, and some people notice right away. But it's shocking when I say I was in a head-on collision by a drunk driver when I was 10 years old, and people are like, whoa, that's incredible. Like, and so when you're telling me your job is to shock people, and I'm like, and then I read somewhere, I'm going to find where I read it, I'll send it to you. And it was like, yeah, people who come up with a 51 2 or more times tend to have near death experiences in their life. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, here I thought all the time I had been victimized in this car accident, that it was just like wrong place at the wrong time. But what if it was truly in my design and part of my life story, that to have had that accident and survived it, and then to be an example and the role model of courage and bravery and overcoming my own personal story about my looks and my face and the judgments that I perceived people to have about me. Even in the conditioning, I'll tell you, the conditioning that I had when people would see my when I was younger, it looked a lot worse. As I'm older now, the scars have really healed, and because of the way I took care of my face and wearing sunscreen and protecting it, the scars were not damaged by the sun. So there's that. But when I think about when people would say, what happened? Why are you wearing all this tape on your face? What's going on with you? I would say things like, oh, I was in a car accident. Like, it wasn't a big deal. It was a huge deal. But I've conditioned myself, because I was so emotionally in tune with people, that when they would feel uncomfortable or sad because I had been in this accident, I would feel like it was my fault that they were having an emotional response to my accident. So instead of allowing myself to say, yeah, it was a really horrific accident and it was hard on me, and to just own that that was true, I would just downplay it and be like, nope, it wasn't a big deal, because I couldn't deal with their feelings on my accident. So I conditioned myself to be like, no big deal, easy breezy. Like, it was fine. I was just a kid. I mean, I'm great. Everything's great. When really, it was not great. I was really struggling, and it was really hard, but I didn't want people to feel bad, because it made me feel even worse that they felt bad from me feeling bad. And that even goes into other situations, even with having been, my dad raising another family, when he'd say like, hey, haven't talked to you in a year, how things going? I would never be like, why didn't you call me on my birthday? That really hurt my feelings, because I didn't want him to feel bad that I was feeling bad. So I conditioned myself over the years to not talk about those things. And so it's just really interesting that all of this stuff that I read in my design, a lot of it I thought was the way my life revealed itself circumstantially. My dad raising another family, having been in the car accident, all these circumstances in my life, I thought, and some of it is nurture and conditioning, but a lot of the way I feel and think is actually in my chart, regardless of how those things have happened. It actually is in my chart that was my personal journey anyway. So I just
even down to you taking care of other people so that they wouldn't have an emotional reaction. In a way, it was almost like taking care of yourself, because you can't handle emotions, right? With the open, there's 9 energy centers, or 9 energy centers. And one of the most important ones for people to look at when they go get their chart is to look at whether you're defined emotionally or not. And if you're not defined emotionally, you have this big sensitivity that you're going to take care of other people so that they don't throw big emotions at you, because it's going to hurt you
Right. Right.
more. I mean, anybody, with some sensitivity in that situation. But I mean, there was a couple things you said in your about, the shocking and the accident. And yes, you were shocked. You were rattled to your core in that accident. And then other people find that news shocking. So it's both, but we'll just leave it at that for now, because
But
there's so much more we could talk about.
I know, but this is what I just want people to understand, is that sometimes the things that you've gone through, I felt, I had a real intolerance to victim mentality in my life, right? And yet the underlying part of it was that there was things that I had been victimized by, and I didn't allow myself to embrace when I had actually been victimized. And there's other parts of my story that I won't talk about here, but so then there's that, like, being intolerant to having feelings about being so having the embracing, there's two sides of that: living your life as a victim mentality and not having the self-empowerment to create your own results, or to be in control of your feelings, or to, pursue the life that you want to, right? There's a victim mentality. But then it also saying, like, I had been victimized, right? It was almost like if I admitted the ways I had been victimized in life, child of a child of an accident, right? And allowing myself to embrace that. Like, I thought that if I severed that part of my life and acted like it didn't matter, then I certainly wasn't being a victim mentality, like where I was really intolerant of that. So as I was, like, intolerant of my own life experience to the point where I acted like it didn't matter. So I want to really reveal to people on here that the human design is just an incredible tool. And to have met someone who is an OG, as I like to recall it, an original gangster of the human design. She's an OG of it, to someone who can, who has that much time and history and background. It feels like so fortuitous, and yet completely intentional, that you and I would have, our paths would have crossed, because you'd be able to bring so much understanding to my chart, my life, the things that I've been seeking for a really long time. So I'm looking forward to that. Which brings me to a little bit of talking about how we even came to be. So you were looking for a copywriter. Why were you looking for a copywriter? Tell my listeners what that is about.
Well, something had been brewing inside of me for a very long time, which is to answer the question that so many people come to me for, is how do I use human design in my life? And most people come to me, I'd say maybe 10 or 20% want relationships, but like 80% want to know how to use this for their career, how to use this in their business, how to be in the material world. Right. And be true to themselves.
Yes.
So this question has been posed to me for so long. And so I created a program, or had this idea of, and had been brewing on it, and had gotten a lot of validation, like, yes, I think that's a perfect thing for you. So that's how we got to this point, is that I had reached out to Courtney because she had come to me for my services, and I saw in her design that she was really good at details, and she was really good at putting things together. And so I reached out to her and I said, would you be interested in creating my workbook? I'm not good on those kinds of details, and I'm formatting and all that. So then I had talked to other people, and honestly, I've been looking for copywriters for years. I've been looking for someone that does branding and coach and copywriting for about 4 years now.
Wow.
Is someone to really help me take my next step.
Yep.
And then so she connected us together, and with, you know, within 15, 20 minutes of talking to you, my coaching program came alive, just blossomed. And so your ability to see me, your ability to see my value and to see all these, my journey come together to this place, and just based on what you knew from your clients and being in the coaching and professional and personal development arena, like what I have in my path was needed by so many people. And to be able to create our lives, but use the human design as the backdrop.
Yes, for sure. Well, and I think that that's what's really interesting, is that human design is a vehicle for understanding, but to some degree, my ability to see you and understand you, it supersedes what I understood about myself, because that's just how I'm built and what my design actually is. I can put a name on it now because my design says so, but my ability to do that was there before I understood that I was designed to do so. And so I've had it happen on several occasions. And I always just thought, you know, oh, they're saying that to be nice, or, you know, I just, people say things to maybe appease others or just to be complimentary. And I've always just kind of downplayed or downgraded my ability to see people, because I just thought, well, that's a weird thing to be able to do, to really understand people and see people. Like, that just sounds weird. And so I've had a couple of clients refer that and say, you know, like, you understood me before, like, I don't even know how you did it. Like, we barely even know each other and you totally get me. And I don't know, I guess it's a gift. And now I'm like, it's a gift. I get to embrace that. So, and the energy was it was almost like I could almost feel it, you know, and we were talking and just, we were firing off. And the connection was really real. And so, and part of the reason why, and I wanted to tell you this on this call, we were talking before this recording, but when you start to really understand who you are as a person and what you're looking for, and for me, it was really naming that. I was like, I'm just really ready to work with a client who is just guns blazing, ready to go, wanting to just really take her business to the next level. And there's part of me that kept discounting why I had to build a very successful business and do this coaching on my own before I could collaborate and connect with someone who is powerful in her own right. I kept thinking, I have to build this thing up over here so that I could be, I guess, the energetic match or the financial frequency match for somebody else who's already in their realm doing their thing and, you know, finding their own success. And so I kept thinking, I have to do this. But in my design, and what I really wanted, not knowing that it was going to be a design, is that I am drawn to collaboration and connection and community. And it's like the number one thing that I crave, which is why I, you know, want to do group programs. And you had said when you did the reading, like, yeah, one-on-one's fine, but like you go with the group, like your energy says group, you should go with the group. But everyone in the coaching industry says like, oh, you can't possibly coach in a group setting until you've learned how to coach in the one-on-one setting, because you have to build up the energy to do so. Where I'm like, everything about my energy says group, collaboration, collective, community, all of those things. And so, so when I think about working with you, and I know you hired me for writing, and I'm doing some guest coaching in your program, and I'm so thrilled because I can't wait to tell all of my people in my Facebook group about it, because I'm like, people need this. But really, just what I, you know, without knowing what's in the future or trying to make it anything that it isn't, I just know that the connection that I've had for you, whether it's like us moving forward and having something else in the future, or someone who has a similar design as you, that like, that's what I crave. That's what I want. I wanted to work in a collaborative sense and build something that makes a huge impact and a difference in the world. I want that so badly. I kept thinking I had to do it on my own because everyone says build your business. And then, you know, like, okay, I have a list of 10,000 people. You have a list of 10,000 people. Now we can come together and then make magic. And I'm like, don't want to wait for that. I feel like I could offer so much more for someone who's as ready to go as I am. So you really affirm that for me, not just in the chart, but just like the connection that we have and the way that you work and the way that I work. And I'm like, okay, I could just do it the way I want to and not wait.
Well, I appreciate all of that. And I actually hadn't drilled down on all those points like you have, but my experience, and this is a point about people growing their business, is that we do need to get support. Like, it was a little bit out of my character to hire someone to do the workbook. I could have done it, or, hired someone on Fiverr, or, I could have done a lot of things. But it was like, no, this relationship is important. I really connected with Courtney. And then when you came along, it was like the investment I made. It was like, I knew in my bones, even though it didn't make sense how everybody else said how you're supposed to do it, I knew in my bones that this was the next step. And finding someone, for me, as human design is not that well known. I imagine we're maybe at 1 million people, maybe a little bit more, and mostly in the last couple of years, because the coaching industry has kind of started to find out about human design, but it's not that well known. And then to have someone like you that was like already studying it and super turned on by it.
Right.
For me, of course, whoever works with me, they've got to love human design to some degree in order to connect with me. So I think both of us had separately, for maybe different reasons, that this is an example for your audience to hear about how you run your business. And I knew my design. I knew I had to have support. I knew certain things had to be in place for me. And I have been wanting those things, these collaborations, these partnerships, for a very long time. And they didn't happen until they happened. And when they happened, it was just like it's like the baby got birthed. It's like this has been in gestation for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the one thing I'd like to say, that even to when you were talking about in an email, you and I had kind of collaborated on the email. You talk about the distraction that people have of who they are and who they aren't, right? This is what the whole point of the design is. But then the thing that you touched on that really resonated with me was like, hey, we're all in different stages. And so being the type of person who thinks that I'm like, I missed my mark, I'm behind, I'm supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, I keep thinking like, okay, I should be further along in my business, or but it was like, but you're exactly where you need to be. Because for me, creating relationships with someone like you or whoever it is, that the next vision of the business that I have, it's like a huge, big vision of serving the masses, right? That person wasn't able to come into my realm until I was able to see myself as, having the ability to provide the energy for that kind of thing. So I think it's just really fascinating. And you totally called it out when you said, people think they are supposed to be further than they are, or they don't understand that there's stages in life. And I'm like, okay, fine. I think I'm jumping my guns here and feeling like I'm supposed to be in a different stage. And yet the stage that I want to be in is calling me. And it's okay to just allow that to happen and to gestate as long as it needs to. And that the relationships and the people that we're all supposed to become together, when we're intentionally holding space for that and knowing the big goal, they all start to kind of come into your awareness and your realm at just the right time.
Right. And there's certain things within human design, how we look at life and the different stages, that when somebody hears that, like, you're exactly where you need to be, when they hear it from someone that's looking at their genetic blueprint, then they can accept it. And that's back to the self-acceptance, that's back to the self-love, and all the stress and because stress is a distraction.
Yeah.
All the distraction of beating yourself up because Mary over there, she's 30 years old and she's done all of this. It's like, well, that's her thing. I mean, it's like all that comparison, all of that traps that people fall into take them away from being fulfilled at where they're at right now,
Yeah.
which again, as you talked in this a recent article, is like, and then it leads to trust. Can you trust yourself?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I love it. I love it. Well, okay. So your program starts in 2 weeks. Anyone who is listening to this podcast right now, as it gets published, I encourage you to reach out to me directly, or to ask me how to get in touch with Nattalee, or to go to her website and book a call with her. This program, I'm super excited to be, doing a tiny section of, but also just to be sitting in and witnessing on this magic. And it's everything that I've been looking for. And here's why. For those of us who want to make an impact in the world, and that we'd like to create our income and have, freedom to be ourselves, there's a lot of people out there who are like, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Give me this blueprint, or give me this sequence. Tell me the 10 steps to creating a business, and then I'll make it happen. There's another realm of people who are like, I don't want to do it just any old way. I want it to be done my way. I want it to be done in a way that feels so good to me. And there's so many things that people talk about and how to build a business. They're like, okay, do these 10 things every single day and then your business will boom. And I'm like, none of that feels good. None of that sounds exciting. These guru people have these ways of saying, here's the formula. Now do it, and success is on the other side. Well, what if I don't want to do it that way? What if I want to build my own success and build my own business in a very specific way that feels good to me? And that's why I love what you're offering, is helping people to look at their chart and build their business from the inside out. And it's a 5-week program.
5 months.
5 months. It starts in 2 weeks. So here's what I just want to offer to anyone. If you have been interested in starting your own business, or you have your own business and you really just want it to be done in a way that feels super authentic and aligned, and I don't care how cheesy those words are or how overused they are, if you want to have your very own business that supports you and you as a human and you as a soul, right? The way you are built, reach out to Nattalee. Join this program. I'm not an affiliate. I do not make money if you sign up from her. I am not telling you to join her program because I'm getting a kickback. You'll be in it with me. I will be learning alongside of you, because what we ended up titling, or what I threw out the title, who knows if it will stick forever, is Uncommon and Aligned. Because what I want people to understand is that who you are as a human is so unique and uncommon. And the way that you build your business gets to be a reflection of that, as opposed to the way that things are supposed to be done. And a lot of that is releasing some of the conditioning of who you thought you had to be. And so if you're brand new to human design, you might need to do some fast tracking and getting some one-on-one sessions in and jump the gun on some things. Reach out to me. I'll give you some resources. It's really not a beginner program, but it is for anyone who is super enthusiastic and wanting to just run with it, and is willing to let go of the conditioning, and really build a business from the inside out. So if you are listening to this and it's past June 15th and we've already started, this is the first round of this. This is a foundational program that she's going to be doing once or twice a year. The next time around, I think, will be in January. So you should reach out to her anyway and make sure you get on the list. Get a reading with her in the meantime. You can start implementing your design before you structure your business in that way. But it's just really amazing. So I just encourage you to join her in this program. It's going to be amazing. And just understand what human design is for your own sake and for your own health, basically, because I think that the more you understand that self-acceptance, a lot of the inner turmoil that people experience is just living in the confusion of who they are. So that alone is worth thousands and thousands of dollars. And your health is priceless. And when you can feel confident in who you are, making decisions about everything else in life just gets easier. It really does. So do you have anything you want to add? I think we're going to probably wrap this up a little bit, but.
Yeah, I mean, just perfect. Exclamation points with all that you said. And the only comment about the 10 steps, do these 10 steps, is that many people have done the 10 steps and they're burnt out
Mm,
or
yeah.
they know it doesn't work for them, but nobody has shown them what to do. And based on who they are. This
Mhm.
is very individualized. And when people sign up for this program or you come to me, it is all about you and your design and how your energy works and what you're looking for and what you're not looking for, so to speak.
Right.
It's very, very individualized. And that's what this whole evolution that we're in. We're in the evolution of people living according to who they were born to be.
Yes. Yes.
Clarity and confidence, and human design lays that out perfectly.
Yeah, it does. And I'll even say, so I mean, and the program that have been developing for the last couple of years, slowly but surely piecing my own journey together and then understanding what that meant. I actually ended up having to rebrand it and rename it because I had no idea the politicalness around the word mask. But originally I had built a program in my mind, right? And I had worked on some of it with clients of trash the mask, right? It's like being who you truly are, not this facade that you've created for yourself and who you needed to be for the world. And it's at the time I didn't fully even understand that it was about conditioning, like what I was understanding about creating boundaries and learning self-trust and self-love and self-care, all of those things. It was about letting go of conditioning. And so, but what I really love is that everything that I have been doing and in my, what is just, I think a general life coaching type of program that I have, it's like taking some of those concepts and within your program, it's like putting it on steroids, and it's creating the full picture of how you can impact the world. Right. And I don't say that in just like a grandiose way of just like who you are, whether it's within your own home with your family, whatever it is, your small business. I don't mean the whole world, whatever's in your world, whatever's in your realm, and doing that within your design. I'm like, this was like the final piece of the puzzle for me of like how to put it all together. So I can't wait to be in the program and to learn from you. Like I said, anyone who's interested, reach out to Nattalee. I will put in the show notes a link to her website, and through the website you can book a call directly. And if you know me personally, because I do have quite a few friends and colleagues and peers that listen to this podcast, reach out to me if you have any specific questions. There's only a handful of coaches that I will shout from the rooftops on and recommend personally, and she's one of them. I have a short list of those people, and she's definitely on it. So thanks for listening. Did you have any last words? I think I already asked you that, but all right, great.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you
good.
so much. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
And so I'll put this in the show notes, access to her website. We start in a couple of weeks, so jump in if you're interested, and reach out to me if you have any questions. Book a call with her if you just want to jump in board. Like follow your intuition, follow your gut if that's your intuition, I guess, or not your strategy, right? Get more information if you need it. And that's it. So, and also, if you haven't joined my Facebook group, you go ahead and do it. I've got the Brilliant Brain Training. That is my rebranded version of Trash the Mask. It's the Facebook group. We talk really a lot about how to retrain your brain from the deconditioning and to step out into your own version of life that's right and true for you. No matter what you've been told in the past, I help people to trust themselves first and foremost of all things. So, all right. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you later.